This show is intended for all audiences, but some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener caution is advised.
You're listening to The Quest, Advancing the Art of Role-Playing, the show where we talk about role-playing in all of its forms, from tabletop to LARP and even cosplay. This is where we offer tips and tricks to role-players, new and old, hero or GM, and where we share our passion for role-playing and collaborative storytelling with you. The Quest is a proud member of the Dancing Giraffe Productions Network. You can learn more about Dancing Giraffe Productions at dancinggiraffe.net, and is brought to you in part by Geek Fan Expo, uniting geeks September 5th, 6th, and 7th, 2014 at the Doubletree Hotel in Dearborn, Michigan. You can find GFX on the web at www.geekfanexpo.com or on Facebook and Twitter at Geek Fan Expo. Additional funding for the show is provided by MI Techmedic, that's mitechmedic.com. Browncoat Convention Photography on Facebook at Browncoat Photography and on Twitter at Browncoat Photo, and by the support of listeners like you. You can follow me, your host, on Twitter and Facebook at IRNerdivore, or you can email the show at thequest@dancinggiraffe.net. And now, thank you for joining us on The Quest. Hello and welcome to episode number 8 of The Quest. Today we're going to be talking about death and dying in role-playing games and what it means to, well, the people who die and are deathed. I am today joined by Laura.
Hello.
Brandon.
Hi.
And Evelyn.
Hello.
So the usual crew as always, or not always, as the case has been. A couple announcements before we get started today. The Quest has been featured recently on iTunes, so that's a good thing. Find us on iTunes, of course. Do it. Leave comments. We need those. Other than that, I think the only other comment I have for today to start out with is make sure you call us and leave messages on the Dancing Giraffe website. There's a widget there you'll find for the Google Voice, and you can leave a message there and we will listen to your messages and play them on the air or on the quote unquote air if it is something worth listening to or worth sharing. So let's go ahead and get into the news.
From Mashable.com, George Lucas has been working behind the scenes on his proposed Cultural Arts Museum. Not just a home for all the art he's collected over the last 4 decades, but a place to tell the story of visual storytelling. The Lucas Cultural Arts Museum is one of 3 finalists competing for a coveted spot in the San Francisco Presidio, right by the waterfront with a commanding view of the Golden Gate Bridge. The 3 have been whittled down from an initial 16 proposals. Lucas insiders say if the Presidio doesn't choose his proposal, he won't look elsewhere in the Bay Area. He'll build it in Chicago, where Mayor Rahm Emanuel awaits with open arms. It'll be a nice wedding present for Melody, the former Lucasfilm chief has said. Though San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee has come out in favor of the Lucas proposal, the trust decision is no slam dunk. Lucas faces some stiff competition in the form of the Presidio Exchange, an open source and partly open air museum that would host many kinds of free events and act as a cultural center for the Presidio. The third proposal is the Sustainability Institute. Check out the videos on Mashable.com for more.
Yeah, it's a very boring video. I watched it earlier. I think they got the wrong narrator for it, but it's interesting. They talk about, how they've had this thing that's gone around from show to show and has been, for teaching children and things like that and trying to make get people inspired. It's too bad they did away with LucasArts because that's pretty much what LucasArts used to do.
Is it bad that I kind of hope a little the Presidio doesn't choose him because Chicago's a hell of a lot closer than California?
They should put it in Detroit. Put it in Detroit. Listen to me, George. Put it in Detroit.
Yeah.
We got to rebuild this town sometime.
From PalladiumBooks.com, if you're a Robotech fan, this is the game you've been waited for decades.
And I am.
I figured that you and Brandon would probably be scrabbling over this.
I was considering it, but it looked to be a lot of money, and I was like, I would really love to have them, but I'm not sure if I would get my money's worth.
Beautifully sculpted, in-scale game pieces and the fast action of Robotech brings Robotech RPG tactics together. It's a fast-paced tabletop combat game that captures the action and adventure of the Robotech anime. 2 or more players can engage in small squad skirmishes or scale up massive battles. Relive the clashes of the first Robotech War engage in standalone tactical games, or use the dynamic game pieces to enhance your Robotech RPG experience. Or simply collect your favorite mecha from an expanding range of top-notch game pieces.
Mecha versus Mecha. Take command of the fighting forces of the United Earth Defense Force, valiantly defending Earth from alien annihilation, or lead massive clone armies of the Zentradi Armada to recover an alien artifact of immense power and enslave humankind. Go to Palladium.com for a detailed list of the box set.
Thanks for the assist there, Brandon.
My bad.
And finally, from OceanicGamer.com, we bring you news of the latest SWTOR update.
As promised last episode.
Yes. Highlights. New vehicle. The Dazzler Nomad is a rare drop from the final boss of all level 55 hard mode flashpoints. New feature. Players can now purchase cartel coins in-game through the Add Coins interface within the cartel market. Vendor update. Emergency medical table and mood. Outraged have been added to the Bounty Supply Company vendor. Each item is bind on pickup and available for 1 credit to all players, regardless of the Bounty Supply Company reputation rank. New feature. Players can now purchase cartel coins in-game through the Add Coins interface within the cartel market. This feature requires that players opt in before it can be accessed. Subscribers receive a 50% discount on the first purchase made using the in-game feature. Please note, this offer does not apply to the cartel coin purchases made using the website.
Yeah. And that was update 2.3.2. And now this morning they came out with 2.3.2a, which has removed the cartel coin purchase feature, at least temporarily, because they put it in there and they said it was going to be a dynamic change that would be coming over the next couple of days. It would become active. Well, there was so much outcry on the forums because people don't read anything that EA basically took the thing down, and so hopefully they'll put it back up in the next couple of days. As I'm looking forward to buying, I'm looking forward to having enough money to purchase the biggest cartel coin pack for half off, because I like cartel coins and I spend them a lot. Other than that, I think the SWTOR game is a lot of fun, and I think everyone should play. And if you want to play, write the show, and I'll send you a link to get into the game and get some good stuff. And I'll get some good stuff, and you'll get some good stuff, and everyone gets some good stuff, and it'll be all right. So. That's it for the news. Let's talk a little bit today about Death and Dying. One of the biggest things about Death and Dying in a game is it can be one of those things that players totally fear, and it's those things that GMs sometimes lament doing. Not GMs like me, but some GMs lament doing. This also ties into the Joss Whedon discussion we were talking about last show. So at some point during the show, I will explain why I hate Joss Whedon, and it isn't just because of his comments about Star Wars. So how do you guys particularly feel about having your characters killed off during gameplay?
Well, I've gotten a lot better the more we've gamed, but I still get mad.
Slowly desensitizing.
Yeah.
I think depending on the circumstances surrounding the death, usually it's a fun experience for me. My first character death was our friend Jamie's D&D game, and my first thought was, crap, I really like this character. My second thought was, ooh, I get to make a new character. And as a brand new player, that was exciting for me.
I didn't really start killing off a lot of characters until, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Before that, PCs were pretty sure they were safe through most of my campaigns. They might get beat up really bad. There's an article by not Joss Whedon, by John Wick, who is one of the creators of Legend of the Five Rings and Seventh Sea, and one of my personal RPG creation heroes. He has I don't remember where I read it at, but years ago he said that players want to be beaten, they want to be bruised, they want to have the crap kicked out of them, they want to feel like they've earned everything they've gained, as long as in the end they win, they're happy. Well, I believe that's absolutely true. And I believe the first real PC deaths caused by GM and not PvP in any of my campaigns was the Tomb of Ichiban, when I killed off, I think, 4 characters in 4 gaming sessions. And then one died several gaming sessions later. I don't know how many exactly I killed, but I know I killed a couple.
It really largely depends on the death. If it's a good death, I can deal with it, because if it's a good story element, and it's satisfying, then I can be satisfied with that. It's the same way in literature or in movies. If they die after they've landed the ship and get skewered through the through the heart by a random ship piece for no freaking reason. It's not a good death.
So you're not really a fan of George R. R. Martin either, who kills characters off randomly for no reason,
necessarily.
and sometimes not even on camera.
A lot of but a lot of the deaths are good. I mean, like the whole, I don't know how spoilery we want to get, but the whole, it's past the point in the show. The whole Red Wedding is a fairly satisfying, like 18,000 deaths.
Yeah.
Because it's dramatic and it's a good story element.
One of the things with George R. R. Martin, where he's killing people, is it seems to be more acceptable because it's more of a realistic type of thing.
Sure.
Whereas when you're doing a role-playing game, generally, while you do like a realistic aspect, you're looking for the heroic type of thing, which there is some of that in George R. R. Martin's, but it's more plausible, I guess.
Yeah, well, he's gotten you accustomed to it almost right away. I mean, the first scene in the very first book, is basically a guy getting his head lopped off.
Right.
Not quite the first scene, but some of the first scenes in the book and one of the first scenes in the show.
Well, and you talk realism, I mean, and heroics. If the entire point of your character is to go be the big damn hero, at some point the realistic expectation is that you're going to die. There's going to be a mission that you're not going to come back from.
I think that's a hard
yes,
part.
that's one of the
balancing
things.
that.
Well, that's one of the things is like it's balancing the heroic death versus the realistic, not as heroic death.
Yeah, one of the things I don't think I've really done in the games, and it's something I'd like to get to do at some point just to see the reaction, would be to have a character who is killed off almost meaninglessly. Now, you think Star Wars, Ben Kenobi sacrifices himself, and spoiler alert, 1977 film.
Statute of limitations is up for that.
Yeah. Anyway, sacrifices himself so that Luke can whatever. It seems like a meaningless death, and from a 10-year-old's perspective, it was meaningless. From a storyteller's perspective, I understand it, but there are deaths that happen like that that are they're not heroic. They're just kind of meaningless. Those are the kind of deaths that I think we don't really get much in role-playing games, but can actually have a significant impact on the other players. So the meaningless death of one PC might actually motivate other PCs, or might actually get them to have a greater emotional effect. It's not something I've ever tried, but I don't know if you guys ever been a part of a game that's had that or in it, or what your thoughts on that would be.
Well, you kind of did that almost in the Woad game where my
That's true.
detective, was in the cafe and I just had some words with my partner about something or other, and walked out and
got gunned down in the middle of the street like a dog.
Yeah.
pretty much. I did blow the one dude's face off before I got riddled with bullets, and
I had some
bled
guilt
out.
issues after that.
See, that's the kind of, and I mean, as far as storytelling goes, that can be a pretty good storytelling element.
But yeah, it was mostly a meaningless death,
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking about
well,
applying
it wasn't. Didn't you say that one was like you had not planned that?
I
It
did
just
not
kinda
plan that.
happened?
There was something going on in the situation and a gunfight. There was basically a drive-by shooting, and I expected the players to all take cover. But there were just so many successes rolled that I couldn't help but put an end to a character. I couldn't do it. It was just so many.
Yeah.
It was
fate.
crazy.
It was
was
the dice.
fate.
The dice knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Which, as we
And
discussed
your
last
character
episode,
got to come back later. So.
Yeah. as I discussed in
We
the
weren't
last episode, I
necessarily
really like
explan-
dice.
We weren't really expecting the character to come back, but
No,
it made
Yeah.
sense for the game.
for me too, whether or not it's a satisfying death has a lot to do with whether I accomplished what I wanted to do. Like if I've been working on this character and I've been, working towards something, and then all of a sudden my character is dead.
Yeah.
I find that kind of frustrating.
Yeah, well, you get unresolved stories when storytelling all
Right.
the time, because think of the guy in every single war movie who shows you the picture of his girl and tells you about how he's so close to getting out and what he's going to do when he gets home, and he's going to buy this great house, and then bam, his face is gone.
So you never do that in war movies.
No, don't do it in role-playing games either. They'll blow your face off. There were some stories. I ran an Imperial Marines game in the old West End Games D6 system, and
Good times.
good times. And that was a very, very good game, and it was a very war movie-esque feeling, except it was I based it kind of on the show Space Above and Beyond. I tried to keep that dark feeling because the last episode of Space Above and Beyond, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen a movie or show that came out, I don't know, 20 years ago. At the last episode, pretty much everybody dies except like the one main character, but really the whole squad is killed. And I was kind of going for that sort of feel where these Imperial TIE pilot marine people would, they'd be able to do air mission, flight missions, space missions, and land missions and whatnot. And I had made a group of NPCs to go along with these guys that were really, really in depth, and the characters got to a point where they really liked them. And some of those characters had just meaningless demises, or even less than meaningless. They were paralyzed. One of them fell off of a mountain and broke his spine, and was just players cried over it. Well, a player and a half. Brandon was being very, very stout about it, and well, it had been a little trickle of a tear.
I don't know if I got that emotional over the Marines game.
Yeah,
I know Jeanette did.
She was really.
I got emotional a few times with L5R, and I don't remember what the game that Jamie was running, if that was his 1D game or if it was a different one. But I got kind of emotional during the story of that.
Yeah,
I miss Nobu.
Yeah, I don't think that one got Brandon.
I wanted to
that
kill
one.
you
That one
so
actually was
so
starting
much.
to get me.
Yeah, I thought that was a good story, and all because Matt was a metagamer. Love it. It could have been a very simple story.
It was metagaming, but at the same time, at least from my point of view, it wasn't.
Well, it's because he kept talking out of game about it. He wouldn't shut up about it, so I kept
You
kept
should,
changing I kept moving the goalposts and changing the outcome of the story.
You should tell the story so that and for our listeners who weren't present for the
Yeah.
game.
We talked about it a couple.
I think I have talked about it.
Yeah, we
but-
talked about it in the distractions episode.
See, I wasn't there for that episode.
Yeah,
So.
you can listen more to what we did. I don't remember what episode you said it was. The distractions episode.
Yeah.
So it'd be at
5.
dancinggiraffe.net/thequest5 would be the name of the episode. So you can check that one out. It was a good story, and it all stemmed from me trying to make sure that the players were not overly predicting too much of what I was doing, because every story gets predictable eventually, and I as a GM take pride in the fact that sometimes I can confuse my players and sometimes myself while I'm writing.
Yeah, that story made me cry.
I mean,
When I
the
came
death
back
of
and
characters
punched you in the
can
face.
the death of characters can have a profound effect on the players. Brandon, in the L5R game, I ended up killing off your wife, didn't I? I think I did, yeah.
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 In the first major L5R game
Yeah.
that lasted for a while, you ended up killing off my wife with some disease.
Right. The red death plague, which was more to find out in that when it was actually, caused by a sorcerer and whatnot, but you never figured that out. That game unfortunately can never be played again because half the cast is gone. So I mean, I've done things like that in games, and it can have a pretty significant effect. I mean, death is the ultimate game changer.
Yeah.
As far as character deaths goes, your characters being killed, or things that your characters associated well with, family, friends, that kind of thing, that being killed. Do you think that if a PC dies in the group, it makes the other PCs more afraid of death, or do you think it makes? Where does the line draw on where it goes from being acceptable player death to ruthless GMing?
Well, if you kill the same player's character over and over again,
Well, I think that depends on if the GM is gunning for that player, or if the player keeps making stupid decisions.
Yeah, that's true.
If you keep fighting, running face first into
Yeah.
the dragon, you're gonna die.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, his
There was,
character.
what was it, an L5R game that
Yeah, it was
his,
L5R.
His you killed 3 of his characters or something like that?
Yeah, but it was a deadly game. I mean,
No, that's true.
It's a deadly system, and I was playing a game that was a militaristic game. But he got 3 good deaths out of his characters.
Yeah,
I mean,
was
they weren't
gonna
like they were
say,
useless
I feel like
deaths.
he
or
was
anything.
fairly satisfied with. He was relatively okay with it. Most
Well,
of
by
the
the
time.
second time, he was really mad about the first one.
Yeah.
But again, there was a lot of growth in Matt's play during that game. Like, he came into the game and had a very Dungeons and Dragons mentality when we started playing that game, but through the storytelling of you guys and the real threat of death for his character, realizing that I wasn't going to just randomly save him, because that's not what you do in L5R.
Mhm.
By the third character, he was really into the system, and he was the setting, and he really got it. And I think he had a lot of personal growth as a player. And it was fun to watch. It was good for me as a GM to see him do that. And I attribute a lot of that to the death of his characters. Do you guys really have any fear of death in games? I mean, we talk about the Legend of the Five Rings, which is deadly. And then there's Dungeons and Dragons, which is pretty much not deadly. And even if you die, there's resurrection and there's, raise dead and all the other spells. And then there's there's Seventh Sea and the new Star Wars system, which basically don't even have death in them. I mean, they're there, but it's basically not there. I mean, how do you guys play your characters in a system like the new Star Wars system, where there really isn't such a low chance of death? Does it really affect the way you guys play the characters?
I hadn't really even thought about that because I haven't gotten into the rules as much as I probably should for the new Star Wars game. So I was like, I know the lightsaber is wicked,
it's
crazy, brutal, but wicked crazy. But
Wicked shot.
It's wicked shop. But I don't know, like whether that would just kill someone that is a PC or if that would just,
Well,
look, I've got no hand.
You don't come back from being cut in half. I don't think.
well, it depends on whose story you read. Darth Maul comes back in the Clone Wars comics, the Clone Wars TV show, I think. Anyway,
Wow. Well, with the Star Wars games, if you're a Force user, especially a dark side, you just transfer your consciousness into a new clone body, or you just
Right.
take over a non-clone body if you're powerful enough and the body you're going for is weak-willed enough.
Yeah, the Star Wars Edge of the Empire, the way the death and dying in that works basically is you can't die unless you get criticaled to death or you take just massive damage and the GM decides you're dead. There's a system there. Every time you get a critical, the GM rolls a D100 and it tells you what the critical is. And 151 plus is on a D100 is the death. So on a D100, you basically got to get 150. And the way you can do that is by having the number of criticals that you have increase the number of
You roll by 10
Right.
for each critical you've had.
right.
Also, like we were saying, the lightsaber and other weapons, they have the
A vicious rating.
vicious rating,
Right.
which adds a number in increments of 10 to the critical roll.
Right. Which, I mean, you can get pretty brutal pretty quick. And I guess you could die in that if the GM was, rolling right and you were an unlucky person. But I can't think of any characters in the Star Wars universe that died that were anywhere near main characters. I mean, Darth Vader, my hopes, my childhood. So,
The hopes and dreams of one small boy.
yeah,
Dead.
millions of small children. Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah, depending on the game, like you were saying, 7C, 7C really doesn't have a high chance of death. It's pretty much got to be story driven.
Yeah.
Or once in a while, they talk about like the roaring cannons or something like that. And if you get hit with a cannon, you're pretty much dead.
Right.
I think one or two of the campaign or setting books, whatever, certain things that you do could lead to your death, like getting snatched up by imps or gargoyles or whatever the hell they were and
Right.
dropped off the side of a mountain. But other than that, it was like you had to take 3 times your number of dramatic wounds, which
is basically impossible unless somebody's stabbing you while you're on the ground. Like, I want you to die. There are ways to get around death in games too. There's in the Conan RPG by Mongoose Publishing, there is you have fate points, and when your character is essentially dead, you can spend a face point. Face point. You can spend a fate point and be what the big game calls as left for dead. And being left for dead basically means that the GM leaves you alone and you stop bleeding to death. Is that something you guys think is better for the game, or do you think it's, especially for a game like Conan where everything is brutal and the world is so harsh, do you think it's better to have that death than to have that escape, or do you think the escape is a better route?
I think it's good to have a way out, because even that is somewhat limited. I mean, if you don't have any fate points, or if you've spent your fate points already, you have to be more careful.
yeah, some of that just depends on what game you're playing, what the system is, and the type of game that your group and players and GM are trying for. There's some of the advantages, like in L5R, where you have Great Destiny or Dark Fate, where, you know, normally you would be dead, but instead you're just dropped to 0 and left unconscious.
Right.
I think it depends largely on the players too. If you have a group of players who are running headfirst into the dragon, or are making stupid decisions, or abusing the fact that they think their GM is going to bail them out,
Right.
then you need to play a game where you're not going to bail them out, where they're going to learn that they actually need to think about what they're doing,
Yeah,
because
be
their
more reasonable in
character
their
could
actions.
die. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
if you have a good group of players that is focused on the story and what's right for the story, then they're most likely not going to abuse that.
Right. Hopefully.
Most likely.
Every now and then you got to teach players who's boss. Death can be a good storytelling element. If you think to movies, there are some obviously good deaths in film that drive the story forward in the storytelling aspects, the storytelling concept of things like again, Obi-Wan Kenobi dying. The only way Luke can grow is to get out from the shadow of his master, in this case Obi-Wan, and he has to eventually move forward and kill his father in order to become himself, become a man himself. So it's that past, present, and future storytelling. Do you believe that death is necessarily I don't know how to put that. In a situation like that, do you think the same level of storytelling could be accomplished through not killing a character off, through even if it's just an NPC? For example, the World of Darkness game, in order for Elizabeth to grow beyond herself, your character in WoD, Alexander, who was Matt's character, pretty much had to die.
Right, but you also talked to Matt about that right from the get-go. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
he
even
knew.
before he made the character, and told him that if he played this character, the character was going to die because it was part of the story. So
Right.
he already knew that was coming, and he could roleplay accordingly. And
Right, but for you, do
mentally
you think it
prepare.
really affects the way that you played, that you were able to play your character? Do you believe that level of, that he had to die in order for your character to be able to advance that to that next phase, or would there have been another way to do it?
I don't know. I mean,
Also, did you know that he had been talking with Matt about his character dying from the get-go? So did you actually know that his character was going to be dying?
I think I had already known.
Yeah.
Was my character's death more of a...
I think your character's death, actually, I was going to say, I don't think Matt's character's death affected me as much as it was supposed to.
Right.
I think because your character's death was unexpected, Brandon, it affected my character differently. Like I ended up changing the character based on what had happened. Whereas with Matt's character, we were far enough along in the story that I'm not sure it felt like it wasn't going to change the story for him to die.
Right.
Really. And there was a little bit, because I now had I kind of now felt like I needed to avenge him and that kind of
Right.
thing. But it felt like more of a side thing and
Sure.
less of a driving force.
Right. Yeah, it was going for something along the lines of, to basically take everything, give you the feeling of having taken everything away from you. You've lost your partner, you've lost your mentor,
Right.
you've lost, everything, and moving along that way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that bit of storytelling came across effectively, but several parts of that game got out of hand because of the inconsistency in some of the players.
Mm-hmm.
But along the same lines, you're talking about unexpected deaths that can have a profound effect. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, kind of in passing, and I promise we talk about it, is the unexpected deaths of characters in films that can really have a profound effect on the audience. And the thing that everybody brings up now is the death of Wash in Serenity, which is one of the reasons why I hate Joss Whedon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost an arbitrary death. It seemed to serve no purpose. It didn't advance the story at all. It wasn't a heroic death. It meant nothing. It didn't galvanize the crew. It was a stupid thing to do.
But Josh is good for those kind of deaths.
Yeah. And the problem is that sometimes they're meaningful deaths. Like, you could have killed I don't really know too much about Buffy. I haven't watched all the Buffy, and I don't know all of Angel. I know how Angel ends and some stuff. But there's a point in Buffy where you could have killed off Giles, and it would have meant something to the film, or to the show.
Yeah.
But killing off, I don't know, like Willow, in an arbitrary scene where they're walking down the street and they succeed in beating this great vampire beast, and then out of the background some random guy runs up and shoots her and she's dead, which obviously didn't happen.
Tara.
But Tara.
Tara
Okay.
died not long.
Well, whatever. I don't know.
So that scene is burned in my brain forever because I'm a huge Buffy fan, and yes, it was out of the blue. The big fight scene had ended. Everybody was safe. Everything was fine, and then Tara gets shot, and you're left with her looking at Willow, going, "Your shirt," as she's looking at the blood spatter. I cried.
But it does what real element to the story did that add? I mean, what did he?
It made Willow go dark.
Okay, see that serves its purpose though.
Yeah.
The only purpose it serves in Serenity is to take a crew that's already desperate and make them that much more desperate.
Right.
It doesn't serve any kind of purpose.
Wash deserved better than that.
Well, it
Right.
could be that there was an intention for a continued story.
Yeah, except half the cast is dead and nobody wanted to see the next movie. I mean, Joss Whedon basically killed his own creation
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
And this is from a guy who said that he didn't like the way Empire Strikes Back ended.
Right, yeah. What was that? What was it he said about
All right.
about Empire Strikes Back betraying the fans or something
Betraying
like
the
that?
fans. So the actual quote is the quote by Joss Whedon is, "The Empire Strikes Back committed the cardinal sin of not actually ending, which at the time I was appalled by and I still think is a terrible idea." Now that in itself, he's not necessarily wrong that not ending a film is a bad idea, except if you're a storyteller, sometimes you have to leave the crowd wanting. According to Joss Whedon, well, it's not an ending. It's a come back next week or in about 3 years, and that upsets me. I go to movies expecting to have the whole experience. If you want a movie that doesn't end, I'll go to. If I want a movie that doesn't end, I'll go to a French movie. That's a betrayal of the trust for me. A movie has to be complete within itself. It can't just build off the first or play variations. I think he's absolutely wrong, like 100% wrong. I believe that if you're telling an ongoing story, like George Lucas was trying, like, all right, I need to slow down here for a second, breathe. Like George,
He's getting so mad.
I know, I'm so mad.
mad.
The type of story that George Lucas was trying to tell here is, in fact, a 3-part story, even though the first movie is a standalone movie. 2 and 3 are not. They are a standalone set of movies. The 2 together are standalone. They don't need the first one, although if you want better character development, you need the first one. But the idea that that Lucas was going for was the things that he really liked when he was younger, which were the nickel serial movies.
Right.
Of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that's exactly what those were. You listen to the Lone Ranger, the old Lone Ranger episodes, and there was absolutely not one episode that I can think of that I've ever heard that didn't end in a cliffhanger. And the following episode came on the air and there was no resolution to the cliffhanger. It was just, and we jumped the shark and moved on. I mean, that's the way it was. And at least you got a conclusion to the overall story. Let's look at the end of Angel for a second. And the end of Angel, which is, you've got Spike and Angel and this whole group that are going to fight the Senior Citizens Club or whatever they're called. And they rush in headlong, and then the show ends, the credits roll, so you never get a conclusion to what happens. And Joss Whedon's response to that is, well, it's more like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where you just don't really know, did they get through it or did they not? Except in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, you've got 2 guys with 6 shooters and maybe a rifle going against the entire army. They lost. There's no question. Shane rides away at the end. He's dead. In Shane, not Butch Cassidy and the Kid. But in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, they're dead. Thelma and Louise drive off a cliff. They're dead. There's no question to this.
Right.
Angel and Spike and them are these supernatural, ultra powerful creatures who have regained their souls through the storytelling that he has done. And you don't know what happens. There's no conclusion.
If I recall correctly, and it's been a while, and I think I've only seen the ending once, and it pissed me off so bad that I just didn't want to watch it ever again. If I recall correctly, I think the scene closes with the dragon coming at them.
Yes.
So I think the assumption there is kind of, you're dead.
Yeah. And apparently there's a comic book series that comes after that.
Yeah.
That I have not read because I don't read Joss Whedon's.
Except that a dragon's coming at you, but you're 2
ultra badass.
Yeah, 2 ultra badass vampires, and I don't remember what all else was.
It's a vampire Harry Dresden. He can handle this.
Yeah, I don't recall actually seeing that episode.
Yeah.
I recall hearing about it, but I don't know who all else formed their party. I know that there was a vampire hunter that they joined with them at one time.
According to the
there
picture
was
that I'm
a
looking
demon
at.
or something like that.
The picture I'm looking at's got 4 people, and I don't know who they all are because I didn't really watch the show that much, admittedly.
I just don't think Whedon has a leg to stand on when talking about
Not about Star Wars.
trust,
Yeah.
about breaking the trust of your fans or whatever.
Right. I mean, where's the
after
conclusion
that
to book
travesty
story?
of a Firefly movie?
Yeah,
Where's
where's the conclusion to book story? And then you get the
You've just made
conclusion.
Brandon angry.
Oh, I know. And you get the conclusion to that story in a comic book, and it's the worst written comic book I have ever seen. So, all right. So, book story for those of you who want to know, and if you don't, fast forward for I don't know, just listen to this, and you'll hate to. So, the story is that he was a brown coat spy working in he was spying for the brown coats in the Alliance. And the Alliance, I don't know, for some reason, his eye had been replaced with a cybernetic camera that sent back all the information. And I don't know, there was some other stuff in there that was just, it may have been the most contrived crap I have ever read. And I give Joss Whedon 100% full credit for being a great ideas guy. Firefly is one of the greatest television shows of all time, in my opinion. 14 episodes.
I agree.
But look at the credits on those episodes and tell me how many of them are actually written by Joss Whedon. Buffy is a good concept. I am not a big fan of Buffy. I don't really like Angel that much, but they're good concepts. Here's a man who basically can't get away from his own cast to expand and grow. Much Ado About Nothing has basically the Firefly cast. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has got half the cast of Firefly in it, apparently. And I don't have a problem with it. I love the cast of Firefly, but come on.
They do a lot of work. A lot of work together.
Yeah, and they should, because they're all fantastic together, and they're all getting each other work and stuff. And I mean, Nathan Fillion is right up there amongst the geek gods.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but Joss Whedon, basically, to me, I use the word, and I mean it. He's a hack. I think that J.J. Abrams is a hack. I think that Michael Bay is a hack, and I think that he's right up there with those two. He's great ideas, but he should stop there and let somebody else like Tim Minear or somebody. I mean, granted, Tim Minear's got like 4,000 canceled shows, so how good can he really be? But I like the work he's done.
Every episode that Tim Minear wrote the best episodes of Firefly, didn't he?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, and granted, I don't know everything there's to know about Firefly. I focus on things like George Lucas's stuff because that's what I grew up with. But as far as I know, and the things that I've read, Tim Minear is basically one of the head creative writers and producers of the show. Not about producers, but one of the head writers of the show. And he wrote basically almost every episode. And I imagine that Joss is one of those guys, kind of like Jamie is, my friend Jamie, who we talk about a bit and will hopefully be in another episode, who is a great ideas guy, but mostly his storytelling comes from being able to bounce the idea off of somebody who's also a good storyteller, who doesn't necessarily think the same way he does. Seems to me like Joss comes up with the first story element that comes into his mind and runs with it, no matter how wrong he is.
Yeah.
Serenity had 15 minutes of really good show, like really good movie. And then it was an hour and a half of utter crap. It wasn't even a good sci-fi movie, in my opinion. It was just bad storytelling.
Well, there are some people that love it, though.
Yeah.
There are.
Bring on the hate mail.
Did they watch the
We
show?
can take it.
Well, a lot of them watched the movie.
I say.
Quite a few of the ones that I know who like Serenity watched the show after and didn't like the show as much.
Which is crazy.
Well,
Completely insane.
I can
That's
see
like
that
being
though.
pissed off because you watched a movie and then read the book and the book wasn't like the movie.
Right. Well, yes.
Although no, I've talked to some people who watched the movie first, but then went back and watched the show and were like, okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it does
The
happen.
show is amazing.
It doesn't follow. And now I will give Joss Whedon a lot of credit. He does admit to being a very like a Star Wars fan, and the reason he brings up the thing about Empire Strikes Back is because he's getting ready to make a sequel, Avengers 2, which will be out in 2015, and he's referring to Empire as being a sequel done correctly. So I can't really hate him too much because he's right there. It is done right.
You do look for reasons.
I do look for reasons to hate Joss Whedon, mostly because of Serenity and whatnot. But he cites Empire Strikes Back and Godfather 2 as two sequels being done correctly, and he's aspiring to do that with his movies. My first recommendation to Joss Whedon in this is less reflective shots that hold for way too long, because Avengers has way too much of that. Otherwise, it's a good movie. I had somewhere I was going to go with that in particular. I forgot what it was. Oh, my brain just went totally blank.
The sequel's done right.
But right before that. Oh,
Making Avengers.
before that.
Serenity sucks.
Serenity does suck.
Earlier.
I lost it. It's gone.
It'll come to you.
It'll come to me. So the Joss Whedon stuff, he is a fan of. Oh, I will give Joss Whedon credit. That's the part. Because not only does he give, he does say that the Star Wars is one of the sequels done right, but he also, during a panel that he did, I think at Comic-Con 2012, with the majority of the cast of Firefly, and I know Alan Tudyk was there and Nathan Fillion and a few others, he's asked a question and he said, in response to the killing of Wash thing, he said, well, if I had to do over again, things would be different.
He said something about not that if he did it again, he probably wouldn't kill any characters.
Yeah, or at least he wouldn't have killed Wash the way he did.
I think he said he wouldn't have killed any characters, and then Alan Tudyk
just threw his arms
up
up.
And throws his arms up.
Yeah. So I mean, at least he can understand that. One, he did a huge fan disservice. I mean, you talk about a betrayal of the fans.
Yeah.
Between the comic book, which was okay, and then the movie, which was horrid, he really, I think, has learned something. And you look at Avengers, and it's a much better type of movie. He didn't kill off Captain America, I thought he was going to. I went to that movie expecting Captain America to take one right to the face. That shield ain't going to save you from Joss Whedon.
He is the ultimate supervillain.
He's like a bad George R.R. Martin. He really is.
You see, as much as Serenity did not follow Firefly, and as much as Wash's death is painful, it's still iconic for me. I appreciated it as a fan.
I did.
Because it brought me into the movie. It really
the death.
It
you mean?
showed me how much I was in the movie because I sat in theater in tears.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I thought you would have thought
I was in tears before he
the
died.
The group of friends that we hang
Probably
out
for
with,
different reasons.
I think we were actually going through all the stages of mourning after
Yeah.
the movie.
I'm still
I
in the
really
hate
do.
phase.
We were hanging out together for 3
Still
days
in the
afterwards because we
anger.
felt like we had to be around other people who were in as much pain as we were.
The problem is that it didn't serve a particular. He elicited a fantastic emotion. He got to his audience, which is the mark of a great storyteller. The problem is he did it through what I consider to be a cheap ass trick.
Yeah.
He killed Robb Stark for no reason. That's basically what it comes out to. Although, George R. Martin killed Robb Stark for a damn good reason. But basically, you're sitting in the theater and he goes for the cheap laugh. He goes for the cheap trick. It's not a laugh, obviously, because people were crying. But he killed Wash because he was the one character who didn't have anything else to contribute to the story. There was nothing left for Wash to do once they landed the plane and once the ship, and they go into a combat scene. The only characters that really have anything left to add are Jane, Mal, and Zoe.
And of course,
And River, who is Buffy the Reaver Slayer, which was also just cheap ass storytelling.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think that the fact that Joss is able to write strong female characters is outstanding. There are so few strong female characters written, especially by men.
I have to agree.
The problem is that when you tell the same story with that, you tell the same strong female character
The same
over and over and
archetype,
over.
yeah.
same super strong female character that can
Do
almost
everything.
not be defeated because they are just so uber badass at absolutely everything.
Oh, she says Mary Jane.
It's exactly it. She is Joss Whedon's Mary Jane.
Nice throwback to one of the other episodes.
Yeah. I wanted to not say it during that episode, but I really had to. I had to really bite my tongue because I didn't want to get into the Joss Whedon hating. But now I want hate mail because any kind of mail is good mail.
No, I would say if there had been a second Serenity movie, or if Firefly had gotten picked back up, which from what
Still
I've
holding
read,
hopes for.
he said it's dead.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's it's not the things I've read. As of 2012. Now, granted, I haven't seen much since then, but as of 2012, there's still the notion that he wants to revisit the world, but the setting, but he's not really sure it'll ever happen. And if it does, it might not be the original crew.
Okay, so maybe that's where I was getting then. But
the comic book's still going on.
Regardless, if it continued, or I haven't touched the comic books, so
don't.
Yeah, I'm hearing it's bad. If it had continued in television or film fashion, or if the comics have been good, I would say that Wash's death is warranted, because that does then provide a vehicle for growth for Zoe, because now she has to figure out, what do I do without my husband?
Right.
Sure, except now that you've written the story this way, and you've got Wash being dead, and you've got Buffy the Reaver Slayer being essentially now
Invincible,
unstoppable and invincible, you've got a whole other dynamic to the crew, and it's no longer an ensemble cast of people, of ragtag people trying to get by in the world. You've got a group of people who are basically playing second fiddle to a Terminator. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it would have taken the story in a direction that would have lost what made Firefly so magical.
right? Which is exactly the thing I think that he missed out on, and I think that why I don't think Joss Whedon is a great storyteller. He's a good storyteller. I don't think he's great though, because I think he missed an opportunity to be able to maintain a good story. When Lucas ended Empire, you knew you wanted to see what happened next. You needed to know what happens to Han, what happens to Leia, what happens to Chewie. How does Leia deal with the fact that now Han basically said, I know.
Jackass.
What a great line. Improv too. What a great line. Anyway, you had a vested interest. You really wanted to go back and you wanted to see the next movie. Even if the next movie wasn't as good. And I personally think that Empire isn't I think Empire is the best of the 3 movies, best of the 6 movies. Although I think Return is really good too. But it almost lives up to everything you wanted. Whereas Firefly doesn't live up to a single fan expectation. Not one fan expectation. He just misses the mark so completely.
Serenity.
Serenity, not
Serenity
Firefly.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I meant. It misses this point.
Yeah,
Serenity misses the
see,
Firefly fan
If
point.
we don't
Right.
clarify, then you're going to get hate mail, unwarranted
The
hate
wrong
mail.
hate
Yeah, I'll
mail.
get the wrong email. Because Firefly hit every mark it needed
Yes,
to hit,
right.
except the renewal mark.
I'm
Right.
not
Fox.
a...
Yeah, Fox.
Yeah.
And then they canceled Drive, which was also a Nathan Fillion movie, the show that unfortunately ended too soon because I wanted to see how that ended. But
I think they aired more of the episodes later, but they
it
like
never ended.
typical
Though.
Fox fashion, though. I don't know.
We're gonna preempt this. We're gonna preempt this great show that everybody loves for American Idol.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
creating
they
more
don't have
and more
enough
crap music
actual
every year.
people.
This might be the last year for American Idol. Apparently,
thank
apparently
the
it's not doing
gods.
particularly well anymore. Death that is needed.
Right.
Uh,
Death that should have
That
happened
is
years
that would
ago.
be a story appropriate death.
Yeah, it would. Story appropriate death. In my life, that is a story appropriate death. We could do another episode about TV shows that are coming up too. There's a lot of good ones coming out. But anyway, the notion that Empire the Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were not a satisfying set of films that he claims were a betrayal of the fans. And again, I will point out that Joss Whedon is a fan of Star Wars, does like Star Wars, and this came up because he is such a fan of Star Wars. But I think that it's just, I don't know. I think it just shows to me why he doesn't grasp the concept of why fans would be so upset about Firefly and why he could, not Firefly, Serenity, and why he could write something like Serenity. Death in stories can have great points. We're going to get into a couple of spoilers now because we're talking about Game of Thrones more than we already have. One of the key things in Game of Thrones that everybody knows is that nobody is safe. George R.R. Martin will kill all characters you like at some point.
I'm
Yeah.
convinced that the last book is just going to end in the middle of the book
Yeah.
with
We
the
175
dragons-
pages of blankness.
Yeah, the dragons are going to come down. They're going to eat everybody but Daenerys, and then the rest of the pages are just blank.
Right, because he's already killed your interest in Daenerys with book 4.
Right.
So he just hasn't killed her off yet. But you look at some of the deaths in that, and you can find some really compelling reasons to have those deaths happen. Ned Stark dies, and it's a really good death. It's a really crappy death to have because, you know,
It hits you pretty hard
But it
because you
hits
think
you.
he's gonna get just like banished or whatever.
Yeah, because as a reader, you're not thinking this guy's going to die. You're thinking, okay, it's too early in the book to
Right,
kill
yeah,
somebody, and he
yeah.
clearly Ned Stark is a key
Right.
character.
And it's early on enough that you haven't realized that George R. R. Martin
Is
a
loves to
dick.
kill characters.
yeah, but the death is meaningful for the story because it means that the daughters and the sons of Ned Stark have that much more to strive for. Now they must live up to this man's legacy, and they have to try to avenge him. And it basically puts Robb at center focus.
Well, Ned's
No.
death is pretty much the most important death in the entire series, at least so far.
I don't know that
Because-
I necessarily agree with that.
Nope.
I think it's right close.
Who else would you say?
Robb is the number 2 most important death in this series.
Yeah, but everything that Robb did was caused by Ned Stark's death.
Yeah, yes. And we don't know what really happens after Robb's death. But no, if you want to go that route, what happens, the single most important death by that logic is Robert. Because if Robert hadn't
That's
died,
true.
Oh, Bran,
Ned would have
yeah.
stayed But I think that Rob's death has the potential to be one of the greatest catalysts for storytelling there is, because Arya is obviously one of the main characters. She is one of the characters he's going to have to follow because we're getting no real resolution with her story. We've got to eventually get something. Right. While watching Ned die really affected Arya, and it set her down a path. What solidifies that path and what really sets her to making the final decision that this is what she's going to do. She's going to go to Braavos, and she's going to find the Faceless Man, and she's going to do this thing. What drives that, the final step in that, is Rob's death. And I think it's a really important death, assuming that Martin continues on with that thread and makes Arya a major player.
I feel as a fan that he has to in order to redeem the Starks, because at this point you've got Bran and Rickon, who aren't bad yet, but Sansa's just this mealy-mouthed twit.
She's not nearly as bad. I think she's a lot better in the book than she's in the show.
She is better in the book than she is in the show, but even in the book, she's just kind of whiny and highborn and boring.
Yeah, you haven't really seen a whole lot of potential in Sansa
See,
yet.
I disagree necessarily. I don't necessarily agree, I should say, because I think that Sansa is she's portraying a very stereotypical type of character. She's playing a stalwart, and she's enduring through all. It's very Victorian of her.
I feel less like she's enduring because
she's a strong character,
right?
More
and
that she's enduring because
she doesn't know what else. She doesn't have the wherewithal to do anything else.
Yeah,
she always seems like she's looking for somebody else to save her.
Yeah, well, and there are points that she's just straight pissed me off because there are things that could have been avoided had she not gone running to the Queen and tattle, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, if she'd been able to read the parts of the book where Tyrion is, the parts that we get to read about Tyrion, she'd been fine.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, her abandoning Tyrion kind of pissed me off too.
Yeah.
I'd keep Tyrion.
Well, I'd keep Tyrion if it was Peter Dinklage.
Yeah. Well, Tyrion, the character of Tyrion is pretty fantastic.
I do like the character of Tyrion.
It's not Peter Dinklage didn't make that character.
No,
The character is badass.
No, but
he did really
really
bring it
good
to
job
life.
bringing
He's
it to
the
life.
perfect Tyrion, though.
Yeah, I mean he's
except he's too pretty.
But
it's a TV show, so you got to have pretty people.
You got to have somebody that can
supposed to be really ugly.
Yeah,
especially after that battle. The description
well, yeah,
of
he gets his nose
they
chopped
opted
off.
to not take off the nose. I'm assuming because of makeup
he's got
challenges.
the scraggly beard in the book and the mismatched eyes.
Oh yeah,
and
he does have that.
I think it's like
eye thing going.
I don't know if his hair is something with his hair or his beard is patchy or something. I don't know,
but when he dies,
and he's all misshapen.
When he kills him off, I'm going to take the book to George R. R. Martin's book signing, and I'm going to kill him with it. Just, I don't actually mean that. So if he dies because someone beats him to death at a book signing, I was probably not me, probably. But death can have a significant impact on the story, and sometimes you need it. Especially, I think the Game of Thrones stories wouldn't be nearly as good without the death of a lot of those characters. But talking about Tyrion, there's also the maiming of characters. You can maim, and we talked about it a little bit last episode, but we can get a little bit more into it. We've got about 15 minutes we got to kill. So again,
you start talking about Serenity again. That'll take care of
it. We were in about 40 minutes talking about that already. But you're talking about maiming, where Tyrion loses his nose, the Onion Knight loses a hand, Jaime loses a hand. Or does that actually lose a hand, or just
he just loses the first
fingers.
knuckle?
Yeah.
Jaime gets flayed.
No.
So lots of flaying.
No.
No.
Jaime loses a
Jaime
hand. You're thinking of.
I'm thinking of
the
what's
other
his
one.
face?
Theon.
Yeah.
He might get flayed.
He might. In the books, we don't know if he gets flayed or not. Although
parts of him get skinned.
Parts of him get taken. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think the show was doing a pretty good job of portraying what Martin intended to have happen to Theon.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
but
there's that great line in the show. What's the name of the guy who's playing him?
It's
the
Ramsay Snow, I believe.
Ramsay,
No.
not Snow.
No, it's
it
Bolton's bastard.
Yeah. Bolton's
Oh,
bastard.
all right. Yeah, that's true.
He's the.
I don't
Red
think.
Lord.
I think they call him Ramsay Bolton though in the
They may. But
anyways, he says when Bolton tells Theon that
if he can guess,
if he can, if he can.
I think
guess
it was
something?
if he can guess where they're at, he'll let him go.
Yeah, that's right. And then he doesn't, and Theon is is distraught, and he says, "If
you think this is a happy
think,
ending,
yeah, if you think that this has a happy ending, then you haven't been paying attention."
Yeah.
Like
I got
foreshadowing.
chills when he said that.
Well, it's obvious he's talking to the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
So, and I mean, obviously he's maimed. He loses, a lot.
Yeah.
Here. Oh, that scene where he's eating the sausage.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty
So,
awesome.
But really, and spoiler alert.
Yeah, too late.
Too late. I think I said at the beginning of this, didn't I? I did. So anyway,
Yeah.
A while ago.
the notion that you can get away with just maiming a character and get a good effect out of that, I think, is very solid and very reasonable. I don't believe I've ever maimed a character in any of my RPGs. Truly maimed them. I've done a few substantial injuries that have been replaced by cybernetics or whatever, but I don't think. I'm pretty sure nobody's ever lost an arm or a hand or.
Could be an interesting thing to
Well, thanks for volunteering.
Yeah. But I mean, it's true.
I
It
need my
isn't something
mechanic to
we've-
have 2 hands, please.
No, but we haven't done a whole lot with like permanent wounds or anything like that.
No.
Like
Yeah.
most of the time, combat, it's like you take all this damage and then you get healed and you're fine.
Right.
But I think it would be interesting to do it more like, King's Rules kind of thing.
Right, right.
Like if you take a whole lot of damage, then you maybe take you might have a permanent
Right.
wound of some sort.
Yeah, I did mortally wound a character who died of his wounds later, and in Kanar in the LARP, I infected a character had sustained a trauma. This is actually it's a mental trauma, not a physical one. But the result was he hasn't been able to use his arm for the last 7 years. So the player has been playing the game for 7 years, almost 8 years, only being able to use one arm. And he takes his other arm and he puts it in a glove and everything else, and he tucks it in his belt, and it's there. It's fantastic that he does it every event, and that it's been so consistent for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be resolved because I'm pretty sure I'm screwing up his actual arm by doing this. But it's a good story element for him to grow with. I think that's something you can do. I think it's a bit harder to role play that in a tabletop. I think a samurai without an arm is a lot more of a detriment than, I don't know, I can't think of anything else. Like a bard that's missing one arm, if they're a singer. If they're a guitar player, it's going to be kind of suck. But as we know, El Mariachi can get shot in the hand and come back from it. So
Just say you could be a one-armed drummer; it'd be fine.
yeah, no, that's a thing. Who was the one-armed drummer? I don't remember.
I just think I don't know his name, but I'm pretty sure it was Def Leppard.
Yeah,
Their drummer.
I think so. I think you're right. But death and dying for characters, it's such an potentially important aspect for the game. I don't think it's something that can ever be truly overlooked, and you can't fear death in a game, I don't think. I think you have to kind of embrace it. I think L5R is really good. I have convinced my players that the way to play that game is to seek out the best death possible.
I think as a player, you can't fear death, but your character still should fear death.
Your character should absolutely fear death, unless you're playing a game where you don't. But
Right.
Right.
I mean, the whole point of Bushido was that you live each day as though you are dead, so that whatever. But the notion of playing your character to get the best death you can get can be really a lot of fun, because you're not seeking death out. You want your character to live, but you're also willing to look at the situation and be like, you know what? If I die here, 4 other characters get to live. I get to tell a great story, and it's a memory that's going to stay with me. Because who really remembers playing cards with their character? What gaming session have you been in that you remember playing a game of cards? But you remember every single gaming session that you've ever played in where a character died.
As bad as my memory is, my LARP character is death. I could walk you through that entire night.
Right.
Mm.
I've died twice as my character in Kanar through non-self decision making. Basically, I have killed my character a couple times as a GM because I needed to tell a story real quick.
Mhm.
But I've only actually died twice, and I can tell you everything that happened in both of them. And one of them was total crap. We were walking on the trail and we got jumped by freaking elves.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I have a long memory, and I will hunt them all down. I'm waiting for them to come back.
Yeah, I wish you luck. Half of them are in Florida.
It's fine. I'll move down there and take them out. put my garb on, just walk up and start hitting them. But really, I think death can be the one factor in every game that, no matter what the system you're playing in, no matter what the type of game, if it's a video game or if it's live action or tabletop, I think it's the one thing that can really crystallize and galvanize a party, and at the same time give you such a fantastic storytelling opportunity that you're never going to get through any other method of storytelling.
Yeah.
As long as you're not Joss Whedon and killing somebody for no reason.
Mhm.
So, unless there's anything else, I think that's about all we've got for today. I'm sure this is a topic we can talk about again later. This is one of those things that I think Death and Dying is one of the most controversial parts of gaming for a lot of GMs and whatnot. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of stressing out about when to kill off a character and how players will react to it. And I think for my final thought for today, I think will be basically that if you're a player or a GM, don't fear it. Don't run away from it, and understand that as long as you're telling a great story, I don't think anyone is going to be that upset when their character dies. And if they are, explain to them how the storytelling really can be, and help each other as players and GMs work through a character's death. It can be traumatic because you've put so much time and energy into a character, and now that character is gone. With that, I want to thank our sponsors once again. We've got Silky Smooth for doing the news. You can find them at
www.silkysmooth.com. SELKIESMOOTHE.
And then we've got Brown Coat Convention Photography, which is also Life and Still Photography, which is at...
You can find me at Browncoat Photo on Twitter, or you can check out my website at lifeandstillphoto.com.
And then then we've got MyTechMedic, mitechmedic.com. Not going to be useful for most of you who are listening who are not in the Ann Arbor area, but everybody else, please call. Then we've got, finally, Geek Fan Expo, which is going to be found at geekfanexpo.com. And that show will be just under a year away on September 5th, 6th, and 7th at the Doubletree Dearborn Hotel in Detroit, Michigan, although technically it's in Dearborn. Their address is Dearborn and Detroit. So tickets are available online now at geekfanexpo.com. Come check us out. We're going to have the Gen Con Library. We're going to have Dead State Pavilion. We're going to have a lot of other stuff going on. So should be good. Hopefully we can announce some guests before too much longer. We can't do that yet, but hopefully we can. So without anything else, if no one has anything they want to add, I think we'll call it a night. So long. You've been listening to The Quest. I'm your host, Jeff Harvey, and you can follow me on Twitter at IRNerdivore. Don't forget about our friends at www.geekfanexpo.com. And for all of our friends here in the studio and all of our guests, we want to say so long and thanks for all the fish.
Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go back to New Orleans. You know it hurts me so. Baby, I'm way down here. You know I'm way down here. Baby, I'm way down here in a Roland Falls, baby, please.